And if you don't go there, you're going to stay here. And if you're here, you won't really see there. And yet the there is calling. And it calls you from your here. So we're going to use a Bible story, and I'm going to go through a few verses because I think it really helps. In 1 Kings 17, verse 2 to 6, this is Elijah. There's been a drought in the land. I don't remember, there's been a drought. And then it says, the word of the Lord came to Elijah, and he says, leave here. So God says, leave here, turn eastward and hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there. So Elijah, there's a drought. Best thing normally when there's problems, and I don't know, perhaps people are like sick because of the drought, is to perhaps stay still. God calls him and says, it's time to get up from here and go there. In the middle of the drought, there was something about a response of, you've got to go there. And God says, leave here and go there. So he did what the Lord had told him. He was good. He went to the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan, and he stayed there. Right? So God's got something going on here. He's saying, look, you can't stay here. You've got to go there. And I think for many of us, we like staying here when we should be going there. There's something in us that wants to settle. In fact, I've got a bit of a title for this message. I don't always share my titles, but this one is being a sojourner, not a settler. Being a sojourner is one that doesn't really settle. There's always somewhere else to go. And if you decided to follow Jesus, you've got to know that it's a life of actually following. And in following, you can't stay here, you've got to go there. And yet what I see in the church so often is that we want to settle and say, hey, this is us for the next sort of 10 years, 20 years. And people celebrate even being in the same place for 300 years. Oh, this is our church building. We've been here for 300 years. God never designed for you to stay here. We've got to go there. We've got to go there. See, there's something in our there because it's all part of what God has put in our life. So we're sojourners. This word sojourner is like, there's something on the journey. You've got to keep going. It's almost like being a pilgrim. We're pilgrims on this journey of keeping on going and discovering. So Elijah, he's here and he arrives. He goes from here to there, and then he stays there because he says that's where your provision is. Some of us don't want to leave here because we're worried that there's no provision there. We'll move there if we see provision, but if we don't, we want to stay here. Some of us are stuck because of trust issues rather than actually stepping out and saying we're on a journey. When you're on a journey, you see, you don't know what you're going to find. But it's everything to do with Jesus, the way that he said, follow me. Follow me. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. So when he was there, he had provision. So he went there. And he's got these birds, these ravens, these big black birds that are actually carrion eaters. They're like vultures, really. And they're coming and bringing, can you imagine where they got it from? Bit of roadkill. I don't know what it is, but they brought like this, they're filled with disease. Just think about it. And these ravens, they're coming, and it's like God has called. He could have called, I don't know, something more elegant. He could have they would just be dropped off. It could have dropped on the stone from heaven. But he says, no, I'm going to use ravens, Elijah. And you're going to go there and they're going to come and feed you. And here they are. They come at the brook at the place of provision. And I want you to realize that you're there. It's not only a place, like a geographical place. Sometimes it can be a geographical place. I believe everyone listened to this message. God is into the people placement program. He will always put you in the place, and he will call you into a place for a purpose. And it's this people placement program, and you're exactly in the right place at the right time. So hearing this message now, no accident, God has placed you to hear this, so maybe you might go there. And sometimes it is geographical, where I had to get up and I went to Uganda, and I had to get up and go. But I want you to know that for many of us as well, it's a cardio-graphical place. It's a cardio-graphical thing. It's from our heart. It's something I need to go in my heart. It's somewhere I need to go that I'm avoiding. So don't just think I'm speaking about you're there is about going to a geographical place. You're there could also be a place you're avoiding that God is saying, when are you going to go there? Let's go there today. Let's go there around that insecurity. Let's go there around that rejection. Let's go there around that hurt. God's just got this way of when we sort of bury hurt and it keeps us here, He'll go there so that we can hopefully go there. You got to realize this is huge. This is huge. If we think somehow God's not able to use us because we have a low self-worth, we're going to have to go there and confront our low self-worth. Say, okay, well, I don't feel like it, but I'm going to move out here and I'm going to speak up to that person that needs to hear who you are. They need to hear my story. They need to hear my testimony. And when they hear it, it's like life to them. And you thought, wow, I had to go there and it scared me. But from it, that person went there. So you start to see how this works. And the first point I got for you is your there depends on moving from your here. So every one of you have today, no matter what's going on in your life, you've got a there. God, you know, it's only when you're dead that you're going to go there and that's the end. Right? When you come and you're with the Lord, that's the end, when you're there. But right now, we all have a there. And it depends on us moving from here. And all the time, even this week, there have been several things. God saying, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready to move there? And it's like this continual moving. But it depends on our moving. But many of us want what the provision that God has, the answer that God has. He wants us to be convinced of our self-worth without going there. We're keener to stay here. And we wonder why there's frustration. Because you're going to have to get up and go there. See, God is always attracted to movement. And it's something that I like preach often is you've got to do something. Some people say, I just don't know what to do. You've got to do something. God is always attracted, even if you're not sure. Step out and it's like, okay, I'm taking a step of faith here. God's always attracted to something moving rather than something that is parked. He can't steer something parked, but he can steer someone that's saying, Lord, would you lead me? And so there's something about that movement that is powerful. The next one is, point 2, is your there depends on growing your character. And I thought about this, and I thought we can all talk about going there, but you're going to need some determination. You're going to need to face up to some of your fears. Like I said, when I got asked to go to Africa, I had all these this attack. I think for 6 months I was thinking, what am I doing going? I don't know what I'm going to say. How do you turn them? I feel unqualified. God challenged this feeling of I'm unqualified. And I had to go there. And he had to work within my character. What he was doing was he was challenging my character. He said, are you saying that I can't use you? Are you saying that you're too much of a failure to be used you, but yet I've saved you and I've called you? Will you be obedient? And so there's this grow in our character. If you want to go there, you're going to need to grow your character. And part of what I see here is the ravens. I mentioned the ravens. They were like these stinking birds that were actually filled with disease, and God chooses to use them to feed the great prophet Elijah. And I don't know, but maybe Elijah, maybe he had something more grand. But instead, I think there was something about character here. God was saying, will you trust me for your provision? Elijah's there saying, Lord, I trust you, you're the provider. But when he heard that it was ravens, there's 2 things that were unclean for a prophet to sort of touch, and that was another woman and birds. And the bird is like an unclean thing. It's just because of death and the fact that it takes dead meat and all these things. And here he is. He's saying, oh yeah, you're actually going to be fed by the very thing you despise. And this challenges me because I just think, wow, God, how often have I decided, God, I'm willing to go there, and I have this little plan of how God's going to provide for me, and it's quite nice and Christian. And then what I have found is when I get there, there's a great big black raven with some entrails hanging from his beak. And then God is saying, here's your provision. And I'm stood back saying, yeah, but it didn't quite come in the shape and the form. Maybe we could have made a nice soup with it. Maybe we could have I like it on a plate and, it would be just look a bit better. And he says, oh no, it's not about the method. And so often, many of us are waiting for our there. We're waiting for it, but we're missing our there because it's dressed up in the form of a raven. But it's still miraculous provision. How do you get ravens to actually fly in every day and drop off your food that sustains you? That is miracle food. But the method sounds disgusting. And one of the things I've learned over the years is don't despise some of the ways that God uses things in your life. Sometimes we're missing them. Sometimes we've already said, oh, well, how could God possibly use that person for my provision? They don't even believe in God. I've seen huge connections with people that have pointed me in the right direction. The Egyptian that says they went that way. People that came in and sort of helped. They were like a link. They were like the dot to dot of the story. And they just said, there it is. And you would look and you think, how would God use that situation? Things that were bad that sometimes caused hurt and pain in our life with the very provision that God worked through and said, here's your there. So where's your there? What have you discounted as a there? What have you said? I don't really know how God can use that rejection of my past. And he's going, oh, let's just go there. I can bring provision that will sustain you. But you see, he's a sojourner. So he's not going to stay there with the ravens. That's not the end of the story. He's on the journey. Some of you are on the journey. You can't. That might be your point for the next part of the journey, right? You've perhaps traveled a while, and maybe you got a little bit weary, and you wanted to settle. But I just feel that today there's some people that God is saying you've got to keep moving to the next part. You've got to move to your there because you've seen a few theirs, but you settled here. And so there's this message that's coming through about confronting fear. Elijah would have been fearful. He had to confront insecurity. What would they say if they knew I was feeding from a bird? Religion, law, self-righteousness, all of it was being challenged. Control. What about control, guys? That we have this thing of God, if we can just do a deal together so I actually understand what's going on here, then I'll go to my there. But I've noticed that God always says, yeah, you go there and you discover. I'm going to use a vulture for a miracle, but you're going to need to trust me. So we move on with the story. And so, as I said, the sojourner, 1 Kings 17:7-10. Sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him. Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. Isn't that amazing? So already God has said there's a widow, and he chooses a widow. Do you think that's interesting that you've got the raven, and I said about, don't touch the women. Oh, but this is a widow who in the cultural part of these days, it would almost be very, very, very low. And he's saying, oh no, God has chosen almost the lowest to be your provision. See, he's combating pride. He'll combat pride in us. He'll challenge our character. He'll challenge if we think we're more important. He's going to come and say, let's work on your character because it's all part of going there. So he went to Zarephath, and when he came to the town gate, a widow was there and she was gathering sticks. And this is this dot to dot that God is building. So point 3, God may dry up your source so you're willing to go there. We need to get over it, guys. Some of us, we cry about it, we're upset about it, because sometimes that source that was once good for a week or a month or a year seems to dry up, and then we're going, oh, Lord, yeah, I don't know, I thought you were faithful, I thought you'd provide, and we start quoting, things like Jehovah Jireh and all those, posh words, and we just think somehow he's going to be the provider, but he's really saying, I'm dry. Maybe God is drying up the provision. We're thinking we're under attack when God is actually wanting us to move, because he will dry up provision. Why? Because as long as you're quite satisfied with a dribble, you'll never enter the flow. There's something within our human nature that will actually be quite happy to tolerate rather than change. And it goes right back to change, vision, go. They work backwards and forwards. Because you've got to realize that you've got to change from just being tolerant of something God is saying, no, you're there is there. Because some of us are here and we shouldn't have stayed here and we've got to move there. Or I just tolerate it. Just put up, it's just the way it is. And we put up with the dribble because it just keeps us alive. But God doesn't want you to just be kept alive. He wants you to actually, what? Live a life of overflow. He wants you to thrive. He wants you to live a life that is worth living. And so what he's doing is he will dry up the source so you're willing to go there, because he's more interested in your there, in your willingness than your comfort. And there was this great big story about a load of Israelites that left Egypt, and they sort of left Egypt, but they didn't really want to leave Egypt. A few million of them. They were in slavery, but they were quite happy to stay where they were. And God said, no, the promised land is there. And they actually weren't happy because they were willing to tolerate slavery. At least they knew what was coming tomorrow. They had their 5-day meal package, and we repeated it it's like we knew. But if we go into we're going to have to go through the wilderness. And if we go in the wilderness, we're going to have to depend on God to bring this bread. And if we go in the wilderness, we might have to cross a river and then sort of approach some giants. But we're going to have to go there to actually see what the greater thing that God has. Are we going to tolerate? So what he does is he hardens the heart of Pharaoh. Who hardens the heart of Pharaoh? Oh, God. Oh, I thought he was big, bad, evil Pharaoh. Oh, no, God hardens his heart, makes things tougher for God's people. So why? So that they get so fed up of it that they say, right, we're now willing to move to there. So maybe there's some things in your life that you're tolerating and that God is just saying, come on, I want to see a willingness. I want to see you move. I'm more interested in you moving to go to there rather than just keeping you happy. Otherwise, you'll tolerate the little. Willingness is huge. It's a huge thing that God's building in every one of us. So as we journey, he goes and he's there with the widow. And he says, hey, I'm hungry. Can you get me something to eat? In verse 12. And she says, as surely as the Lord your God lives, she replied, I don't have any bread. Only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. He must be thinking, have I got the right widow? Because we often think that. It's like we hit a door that seems closed, and then we think, oh, maybe God's got this wrong. Instead of pushing through and knocking on the door, which Jesus taught us to do, and knocking again and asking again. And so it says, she says, I'm gathering a few sticks to take home, make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat and die. That is a bad day. When he turns up, the prophet, he turns up, he's like, already he's seen miracle provision, the birds coming through. He's like challenged some of that character and pride issues. And he's eaten from the ravens. Then the brook dries up. He goes, okay, it's time to go. Willingness. God says, now it's time to go. Now I'm going because it's dried up and I'm moving forward. And here's my provision. At least I've got a person that's going to give me some food. I haven't got any food. In fact, once this is gone, we're dead. Because of the drought, you see. So it's like, we're dead. Talk about being slapped in the face. Do you know what? We got to be careful not to allow you're there to be hijacked by others. We so often let others' response, the response of others, to actually hijack our there, because on the journey we launch out and we're going, and then someone says, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't even got any food. We know that God called us there, or he called us to have a vision. And some of us are even dealing with some vision that we once had, but we've not seen, and somehow someone hijacked it. Wow. Yeah, I know many people, many families, couples, individuals who felt God calling them there, and that might be a physical location, perhaps as a church planter, as a pastor, and friends and family got around and said, do you know what? I think if you're going to go there, you're going to die. In so many words. It's like, that's not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good for the parents. It's not going to be good for like the children. It's not going to be, how are you going to manage? How are you going to, and all these words come in. And then there's this battle saying, do I allow my there, because I feel called to be hijacked, right, by those who are visionless? Because you're going to need vision to change, and you need to go. But if you allow others and you open your ears up to those, and some of these people can be people you love, people that don't quite see it. Maybe they haven't got to the place of having that courage and boldness to go there. Maybe you might be married to one of them. Right? And I want to encourage you. You've got to be careful. You don't let your there get hijacked. Don't let it get hijacked. You got to work it through. You got to say, come on, let's pray. Let's work this through. Let's talk it through. Maybe there's something you've just it's been difficult, so you've just buried it. But I can tell you, you're better off in a foreign country, if that's where God has called you, than staying at home in a place that you're familiar with. God provides when you go to the there. But you're going to need to realize that someone will try and hijack it. You got to watch out. All the time there'll be a voice that will say, do you know what? We haven't got what you're asking. In fact, it's going to dry up, it'll be over, and we're going to die. So many words it will be, I think your vision is foolish. For years we had, especially at the start, God always... What I've noticed is at the very beginning, the enemy will always try and stop your vision, because once your vision gets going, it gets wheels on it, it creates momentum, and God's attracted to momentum. But at the beginning, you'll always have the voices that will say, you'll learn. Or we did that when we were young. You'll learn. Do you know, you'll realize people will let you down. And these voices will come to what? To say, stay here. Stay here. Stay here. Because that way you'll never discover you're there. Wow. So just finishing with the story in verse 17. What happened was, the amazing thing was that Elijah said, go and get the jars, and we're gonna have a prayer time, and then after that, make bread, do the stuff. And do you know what? She started doing it. It says it never ran dry. It says the oil kept flowing and the flour kept coming. And every time she tipped it out, I thought it was the bottom of the jar, but it keeps coming. And the more she came with readiness in the there, you see, she's there, and it's like, because God had said, go there. And so he's pouring it out, and it keeps coming, and it keeps coming. And I don't know if it's for weeks or months, but he stays there. And there's provision in the there. And it's miraculous, but she can't believe it. It keeps coming, these endless jars of provision. But then, you'd think there'd be like, breakthrough, done, I'm in the there, Elijah, I'm now on vacation. No. It says, verse 17, sometime later, the son of the woman who owned the house became ill. He grew worse and worse and finally stopped breathing. But I thought Elijah was there, and he miracle bread and provision. And yet now, it says that when he died, it says that Elijah came along in verse 21. He stretched himself out on the boy 3 times, which I know sounds a strange thing, and cried out to the Lord, Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him. The Lord heard Elijah's cry, and the boy's life returned to him, and he lived. And you got this so it's gone from the widow gathering sticks. She thinks she's going to die, but then there's great provision of the jars that are endless. Then her son gets ill, her only son. She's a widow already. And the son dies. And then Elijah's like, okay, it's not over. It's not over. He comes into the there. And through it, he sees this boy come to life from the dead. says he lived. And this is what I want you to remember. Others are dependent on your there. Others are dependent on your there. Guys, this is where it all comes down to. Others are dependent on your there. Think, going back at the beginning of the story, at point 1, when we were at the beginning, it was like he said, hey, do you know what, Elijah, you need to go to the brook. And when you go to the brook, trust me, this is your there. And he gets to the brook, and then he sees this provision and the ravens, but then it dries up. And then he says, you got to go into the town, there's a widow. See, God already saw the widow, right? But who's he using? Who's he connecting the dots with? It's going to be the prophet who's willing to go there. That means that there's someone in your there. There's someone in your world right now in your there. Whether that is a faith for 5, whether it's someone that you're believing for, whether it's a stranger, there's going to be someone there for you to reach. See, there is someone in your there. See, it's not you got to think this isn't just about me going to get some like nice bread and provision. No, God already saw that son, see, he knew all things. It was like that son was going to die. First, they were going to die of hunger, so he sends him in. But then it's like, oh, he's going to end up dying, but you're going to raise him from the dead. So he says, so you've got to go there. Can you imagine if Elijah said, sorry, but I'm not quite sure how this is going to work out. Can you run that by me again? Notice that God didn't give him all of the steps. He only said this is first step. Some of you want all the steps because you like being in control. Some of you want to know about how God. And he's saying, no, you just need to know and obey and follow me and take the first step and the second step. Then you start to see the story unfold. Others are dependent on your there. Who is in your there? He actually said to the woman, do not fear. And I think someone needs to hear this today. Do not fear. In the place of need, maybe you're here right now, and in your here, there's need, and you don't know how God's going to do it. But I feel like God is here saying, you just need to get up and go there. Confront the fear. See, he's saying don't fear. He's saying confront the fear. God will provide. God will take you. God's hand is on your life, but don't stay here. You got to move there. See, when we get discouraged, when that terrorist comes in and discourages our life, we shrink. And one of the things we do is we stay still. We struggle to even get out and move. We physically struggle to move, but God is saying, come on, you got to leave here and you got to go there. And God is moving us into that place. I've done a bit of a visual for you, and I hope this is going to work. And it's based on the dot to dot. As kids, we used to do the dot to dot books where you'd have the numbers. You never know what the picture was because they were just like an outline of things. But as you went from number 1 to 2 to 3, you start to perhaps get an idea that it's not just like random. There is a design. And there's a design with every one of your theirs. Design with a raven. A design at that point where it felt like it was over, but God comes in and he says, oh, you got to move there. You got to move there. That hurt in your life that you've just buried, and yet God is saying today, will you go there and forgive? Because until you go there, you can't go there. And so the dot to dot is something that we're all involved with. And the first dot, I put G and H down because this story is just one story I want to explain to you. But the focus isn't on ourselves. It was just on the fact that once upon a time, we started a church with 6 people. And when we were still very small, we were in this little town. We didn't have a great big vision. We were just trying to see people in our neighborhood saved. We were there with our sort of handful of people, probably 20 people at this point, when a certain person came along called Sarah. And probably most of you will not even know who Sarah is because she only came for a short period of time. But she came into our church and she had a real call to go to the Netherlands, right? To go to a Bible college thing. So we sent her off. She went off. And when she was there, some of you guys have come on Academy and it's your there. Some of you guys have signed up to Academy Place. You're there. And here she was. She's there, and she meets her husband called Gershon. It's spelt wrong on there, but no worries. Gershon, right? And here it is. She meets him. Oh, they fell in love. They ended up, we're going to get married. We met him. We said, great. And she said, can you come over to the Netherlands and marry us? So we went over, and actually it was in Belgium is where we arrived. And when we arrived over there to go and marry them both, we got sort of the opportunity to stay with a couple there. And their couple was called Yana Marlene Blondeel. Didn't know them. It was just an action. It was either us or another couple. And we just decided to get out of the car at that point. A weekend that was a little bit about the wedding, but it was actually more about the bride. There's something going on with the there, because that weekend God spoke and called this couple who were in business and teaching, and called them to the nations through just saying, oh, we're going to come over. And from there, even in fact in Hereford, our Pastor Joff is here today because of these dot-to-dots happening. And so they got married, and Yana Marlene, they were married already. And then what they did is they had a call a little while later, and they said, do you know what? We want to plant a Freedom Church in Cambodia. So we said, okay, pack your bags, go. So we sent them to Cambodia, and they went to Siem Reap, Cambodia, and they started that church there that is absolutely doing amazing. In fact, this morning, 6 people got saved there this morning. In the there. And while they're there, Jordan was part of the team, our son. He just had a brain operation, and he had a reason perhaps to stay at home because it was risky, but he had the brain operation, he recovered, and he said, as soon as I'm ready and the doctor signs me off, I'm going there. And when he went there, he ended up church planting for a period of time, and just before he left, he met Jay Den. And Jay Den, here he is, he was not saved, but he comes and he meets Jesus. And when he meets Jesus, he ends up then inviting his friend, Volay. And Volay, they get married. And now they have kids. Now there are pastors in Siem Reap. Saved from an incredible background, lost as anything. But God steps into there, here, and says, I'm taking you there. Oh, can you see what's happening? He's moving. And from there was also Sochi and Kim Lee, who were an amazing couple that decided to, hey, we're going to translate for you, Jan. We're going to help you. And they were helping build church. Well, at a certain point, they decided, hey, we're going to go and plant a church in Battambang, which I know many haven't, you don't know where that is, but it's in Cambodia. And you know what? Right there, even this morning, there's about 80 people that were meeting there this morning, right? There's people they're growing church, people's lives being impacted because this amazing couple, Sochi and Kim Lee, said, we're ready to leave our town where they lived. They got several hours away, and they said, we're ready to get up and go there. Oh, ready to go there. And then as they were building, Siem Reap, the church there, other people came in, and this guy came in called Vizal and his future wife, Lita. She was meant to have months to live because of blood cancer, but God healed her because they went there. He was a Buddhist monk, and he came to meet Jesus, and now they've been planted out, and they're in Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, building an amazing church, all because they said they'd go there. Oh, see, when you see the power of there, here it is. See, it's impacting. And when you put all of this together, see, we don't always know what it means. What does it look like? I met this person who's they were drinking, and Jaden and they were just and George goes in and says, I want to invite you to church. I'm willing to go there. Yana Marlene, we're going to get up from our home, and we're going to go to live in Cambodia because of the there. And when you look at these dots, for all of you are involved in this is what we call the Great Commission, is that we go to take this message to the world. And in that world, there are people In that world, there are faces. These are faces of our people that we would have never ever seen. Marriages, children born, people healed, people alive, people free, marriages restored. We're seeing people find a hope and a future and a purpose. We're seeing people break free from addiction, right? This is just one nation, Cambodia, guys. And I want just to show you that if only we would go there. How would we have ever thought when we were in that little town with like 20 people sat in a room that there was something within us that God was saying, are you ready to go there? And when I got asked to go, to Africa for that time to preach, it wasn't because I felt like it and I had any ambition to want to do it. It was the opposite. I wanted to run. What do you want to run from that God is saying? You need to run towards it. See, there's something about running towards it, the there. You got to run to the there, be willing to go to the there. Take encouragement that every one of you are involved with this vision. Every one of you. And you will. Perhaps towards the end of your life, you're going to start to see, we've only just seen a bit of it. And God is going, oh yeah, keep going there. Keep going there. Don't you avoid it. Keep going there. Keep going there. Church, I just believe that God is challenging us on the end of this, that we got to go there. But to go there, to be a sojourner, you can't take your baggage. He never took provision. Elijah went with nothing. That means you got to be ready to run with the vision that's written down in your heart. And I think right now, some of us have still got baggage of unforgiveness, baggage of insecurity, baggage of control. God, I'm willing for you to do that as long as it involves here. Because some of us are scared that if only we were to ask God and say, what's my there? That he might really speak to you and it's not what you want. Yeah, he's saying, will you go there? Because there's others in your there. And I realize everything about this gospel is about the there. Jesus went there for you. He went to the cross for you. He went and met death head on for you. He went there and took the sin of the world on his shoulders. He went there and became rejected so you wouldn't have to be rejected. He went there on that cross and shed his blood so you wouldn't have to shed your blood. He went there in the tomb and died for 3 days. And he went to Hades so you wouldn't have to go there. And he's saying, will you go there? Will you go there for him? Will you go there for others? Because he did it for you.